You open a session, and instead of neatly organized multitracks, you are staring at a single, pre-baked stereo file. The original stems are gone. The bass is fighting the kick drum, and the vocals are either buried in mud or slicing right through your eardrums. To salvage this, we use the outsounding mid-side fall tack. It isolates and repairs a problematic vocal without altering the wide-side instruments. You need 4 specific tools: your digital audio workstation, the compromised stereo file itself, the TDR Nova GE plugin, and a dedicated loudness meter. Learning to navigate this process means a flawed, unmixable 2-track file no longer forces you to throw away an otherwise great song. Before any processing begins, you need to lock down the session's foundation. First, disable your DAW's auto-warp function on long samples. This prevents the software from making false timing assumptions that can shift your transients. This diagram illustrates our next required step: gain staging. You must reduce the clip gain of the audio file until the highest peaks sit between -6 and -12 decibels full scale. Do not simply pull down the track fader to achieve this level. Our processing chain uses analog modeled plugins that are calibrated to a specific input level. If the signal is too hot, the plugins will internally clip and distort the audio before it even reaches the EQ. Proper voltage preparation ensures the plugins have enough headroom to process the signal accurately. Now we load the TDR Nova GE plugin. Instead of operating across the entire track, we are going to change the routing from standard stereo processing into mid-side mode. Vocals and bass anchor the center, while guitars occupy the sides. A standard stereo EQ cut to fix a vocal removes those frequencies from the wide edges. Switching the routing to mid targets only the dead center. This spatial isolation gives you direct access to the vocal track while leaving the stereo width and guitar textures intact. Step 1 for the extraction is to narrow the bandwidth of your EQ node. You are going to use this tight shape to sweep across the center channel and hunt down the frequencies causing the conflict. Bad vocal takes hide in 3 zones. 200 to 400 Hz holds cardboard mud that masks the bassline. 1 to 2.5 kHz contains cheap microphone resonance and nasal whine. Finally, 3.5 to 6 kHz hides harsh ice pick sibilance. Sweeping blindly into the 500 Hz to 1 kHz range often guts the natural warmth of the guitars or the body of the snare. Sticking to these 3 identified zones ensures you are only interacting with vocal-specific artifacts rather than the instruments that share the center space. Once you locate the problematic frequency, do not pull the EQ node down to create a static, permanent cut. A static cut applies that reduction for the entire length of the song. If you do that, you will hollow out the impact of the snare drum, even when the vocal isn't performing. This graph demonstrates the dynamic extraction maneuver. Instead of a permanent cut, you set a threshold so the EQ band ducks only in direct response to the harsh vocal spikes, instantly returning to 0 once the spike has passed. This follows the doctrine that processing should be a reactive response. This method addresses the problem without compromising the physical weight of the track's foundation. Now that the center is clean, we move to the output protocol. Start the final chain with a light glue compressor. This stabilizes the dynamics and helps the various elements feel like a cohesive performance. Next, place a final limiter at the very end of your chain. Set the absolute brick wall ceiling to -1.0 decibels true peak. Looking at this loudness meter, we can see the process of pushing the gain into that limiter. You raise the input until the overall integrated loudness hits the professional target of -10 to -12 LUFS. This specific ratio between the limiter ceiling and the LUFS meter allows the track to reach professional volume standards while keeping the peaks under control. To check your work, perform an A/B test by bypassing the entire plugin chain. When you toggle it off, the harsh, ear-piercing artifacts of that original raw file are exposed. When you toggle the chain back on, as seen on the right, the difference is clear. The center is stable, the sides are unaffected, and the file hits its loudness targets without distortion. The final role is to trust the ear. Use these tools to serve the emotional intent of the performance, rather than just chasing a visual curve. Achieving a professional standard doesn't always require multi-track stems. It requires a disciplined approach to rebalancing the spatial and dynamic information already present in the stereo file.